Welcome to the Connect Like Minds podcast. I'm your host, Sharice. I interview people making a difference in their communities within their creative spaces. And today's special guest is a film composer, music producer, and musician. Welcome to the Connect Like Minds podcast, Eddie Torres.
Hey, thanks. I'm excited to be on board. Thank you, Cherise.
And I'm excited to have you. So we're going to jump right into the interview. So can you tell everyone where you're from?
So I am from Puerto Rico. I was born, raised here in Chicago. My folks
Okay.
came down. They came down here when they were about 16, 17 years old. And I grew up in the north side of Chicago. Go Cubs. I don't
Yeah.
watch too more anymore, but yeah, I grew up around Wrigleyville.
Are you a baseball fan?
Well, not now as much as I was a kid, but I
Okay.
did baseball. Yeah, I did. I love baseball.
Do you come from a big family?
I don't. Actually, a small family. I have three siblings. There's three of us. There's three.
Okay.
I'm the middle child, so I have the middle child syndrome. If that, yeah, there's three. I got a younger brother and an older sister, and then I'm the middle child. There's three of us.
Okay. Have you guys ever thought about doing that challenge on TikTok where you have the middle syndrome child the middle child syndrome where you're like they have the video on the older sibling and then it cuts to the middle child and then it like cuts away from them and doesn't even give you time to talk.
No, I don't think I've seen this one. I'm gonna
Oh
have to
my
check.
god. After this interview we got to check it out. It is hilarious.
Okay, then I'll have to look that up.
So, speaking of music, earlier, because you're a music composer, have you been always interested in music as a child?
Well, that's a funny, interesting story. At the age of 9, my dad walked in with a guitar, a $26 guitar. None of us were musicians, but
Mhm.
Dad certainly was not a musician. He just wanted to learn how to play guitar, so he walks in with this $26 acoustic guitar, and I see him play it. He's just kind of hitting the chords, and I gravitated to it. It did something to me internally that I wanted to learn. I wanted to know more. So I had complete desire to just like take that guitar from him and just and learn, and so that was the probably the first time. No, that was the first time that I felt the desire to become a musician. At
Were
that
you
point.
the only one in your family who was interested in music?
Well, my sister sang a little bit. We
Okay.
also grew up in a Pentecostal church
Okay.
outside Chicago, and she started going to a church, and she started singing at the church with the team, and so she developed some singing that time frame, and then she introduced us, the family, to the church, and we
Uh-huh.
started going, and before I knew it, I was on stage playing with the guys, but even
Wow.
before that, going back at the age of 9 when I started the guitar, playing guitar, I dove so much into it. We were going to a Catholic church at the time, at that age, and by the age of 11, I dove so much into playing that instrument that I was my first time on stage, and it was at 11. I also developed the skill set to play guitar and bass in a short period of time, and in
Wow.
that I used to sit up all the way at the front of the church and watch the musicians play and just memorize their positioning and hands. And I'd go back to my house and I would practice. My dad bought me a bass, a $60 bass over at Goldblatt's. I don't know if people know what that store is, but it was a huge department store back then.
Okay.
They're no longer around. But and then by the age of 11, I got on stage playing that instrument. And then my sister also, after that's when she's started developing the desire to get involved in singing.
Okay, so it's safe to say that you were a self-starter, like you taught yourself how to play. No one taught you how to do this.
100% self-taught folks. We came up in humble beginnings, so we didn't have a lot of money to go to school. What I learned on my own by educating myself, hanging with other musicians, and once I got to high school, I was able to jump into band and start learning a little bit more about theory and music and understanding some more, gaining on more knowledge in music.
Now, when I was in high school, I also took music theory, and it was extremely hard for me. I was in choir, and then I just wanted to learn how to play the drums, and so I ended up getting in band. Which rarely happens, but I ended up being able to be in band during my junior year. And my band teacher was like, "Well, if you want to be here, you have to take music theory because you need to learn how to play this instrument." So I
Yeah,
was doing the bass drum, learning music theory, and it was extremely hard,
yeah.
especially for me.
Because
How
your
was
ears
it for you?
are already developed. That's what I felt. The same thing in classroom. The teacher would, at the end in band, I had to take up the trumpet. So I was playing
Okay.
trumpet in band, and I had to read, and you're learning the basics of reading, and I'd get up front, I'd learn the part, I'd memorize it by ear, and I'd get up front and play the part, and the teacher would yell at me, why are you playing with your eyes closed? And I said, because I already know the part. He said, no, no, I need you to read. You need to be looking. And I struggle. I stare at that thing, and I think I get thrown off. So
Yeah.
it was challenging, like you're saying to yourself. It was hard because the ear's already developed.
Right. And that's how I learned how to play the drums. I just was looking at people at church and I was like, I'm going to try that. So when you were telling me that you were I don't think I could look at somebody play the guitar and do that. So you're extremely talented, but I was learning how to, hit the snare and I was like, "All right, I got this." And I was hitting the bass. I was like, "All right, I got it." But yeah, that seems extremely hard for somebody like me. But I'm glad that we're here now talking about this because I'm pretty sure someone else out there is like, man, I want to learn how to do this, but maybe they can learn the same way that you did.
Absolutely. Don't feel like don't be constrained that you need to learn the books
Right.
in music, right? If your heartbeat, some people are just really naturally gifted, and that might be in your genes with the family down the line. I didn't have any. I don't, maybe during my ancestors time maybe, and I don't even know. But yeah, anyone who wants to learn, they should just grab an instrument, watch. I mean, now you have, YouTube Academy versus where I didn't have that when I was
You're
doing it. And
right.
you can pick up and start seeing hand positioning, understanding a little bit more about playing, and learn a lot faster than probably you and I did. But
Right.
you had a hard, though it was in chords constructed. But it was beat and rhythm, so
Yeah.
timing, and
It's
also chemistry,
everything.
man, was very important. If not, everyone looked at you.
True,
Gone
true.
so fast.
Now, let's set the stage. So you're 11 years old. You're performing at a church right now. Did you have dreams at that time to become some music producer or composer at that time?
No, it's ironic. No, for me, it was just the hunger of playing an instrument. So
Hmm.
my desire was like, man, if I get to play with some other people, that would be so cool. And as I
Right.
got into my teens and get invited to play with other musicians and other gigs, and that lit me up. And all I thought was that I would be just a musician, a gig
Yeah.
musician, playing at church and wherever I got an opportunity to play with. So I had no idea where the that this would become my career. No, I just thought I'd be a gigging musician. Every opportunity you get. And back then, we weren't even getting paid. You played
Oh
that.
man, yeah. Nowadays you get paid when you play at a church.
Yeah, yeah, you do. Now there's budgets. Now churches, they prepare a budget to put
Yeah.
together a worship team, have musicians, singers, production, etc. But back then, you were lucky if you got a chance to play, and so no one cared about money. You were like, oh, just I want to play. Let me play this Sunday.
That's true. That's very true. What kind of composers or singers, or music of like any type of genre of music did you listen to growing up?
Gosh, the funny thing I say to this is not in thinking that it would be a piece that I could learn from and build from later on in life. I'd hear so many music, but I wasn't generally focusing on who's the guys behind that music, who wrote the music, who wrote the songs, who were the arrangers, who were the composers. I just listened to music as it was, and then
Mhm.
later on is when I started figuring out, oh my God, John Williams was, watching Jaws and all the great Star Wars and
Yeah.
listening to other guys like Brian Tyler. There's just a list of them that let's see, I can poke here because there's some guys that just later on in my life that just like my God, I felt like there were things I picked up from them without even knowing. Later on,
Oh,
Michael Giacchino from Alan Silvestri, Back to the Future, Hans Zimmer, of course, Lion King, and
yeah.
I had an opportunity just recently to go to his concert. He was on tour here in the USA,
Oh,
I got a chance to see him in concert, and that was the best concert of my life. It was
I believe it.
yeah, it was spectacular to see him perform on stage, and and then in the music world, following musicians, Quincy Jones,
Yeah.
Foster, folks that produce Earth, Wind and Fire, Shaka Khan, Michael Jackson, all these guys were just listen to their music, but never really realize, never really had the I'd say probably the interest, not
Yeah.
knowing who were making the music. I just wanted to learn how to play it. I wanted to learn those rhythms as a musician. So when they
Right.
called us to play, yeah, I know that track. Yeah, I know I can play that track. So till later on in life when I got more involved into film.
Okay. Do you have a favorite genre of music now?
So, gosh, man, I say I used to focus on smooth jazz, smooth
Okay.
jazz for me, and then so it was R&B. And later on, then I get started evolving. Like, man, I like classical. I like Latin jazz. I like pop. I like funk, and realized that my palette was just like, man, I like them all.
Okay.
I have sometimes certain artists that I like to listen to a lot, but smooth jazz was a big thing for me for influencing and playing, and guys like Spyro Gyra, Kiko Matsui, these were musicians and bands that were just like they were back in the day. We had a radio station called here WNUA,
Hmm.
popular jazz station, and the host was Ramsey Lewis, an amazing piano player. And when they first started that show, I remember calling the station one because there was a song that I loved from Spyro Gyra, and I called
Hmm.
the station not knowing, but I said, "Hey, this song that you just played, it was Al Jarreau. I don't know if you know Al Jarreau, but Al Jarreau was singing this track, and I said, "Hey, can you play that? You just played that song 5 minutes ago of Al Jarreau, so I could record it." Yeah, we can't do that. You can't record that stuff. That's illegal. I'm like, well, why? I didn't know. I have no
Yeah.
understanding of that, of the legality of
Right.
recording stuff that's copywritten, etc. But yeah, so smooth jazz was like, but now I have a big, to me, it's
Oh
just a
yeah.
song in a whole. This got good music. It's got a good lyric. It's got good beats. It got great musicians, and it was production quality was fantastic. So I tune into that.
Okay, that's awesome. So, when you made it to high school, right? And you graduated, or maybe let's take it back before you graduated. When you were in high school, did you have any other interests other than music, or music was like your number one thing that you wanted to do?
Well, it was my number one thing, but I love baseball.
Okay.
So I was in Little League. I joined the Little League when I was in grammar school and played ball. I was part of actually it was a police station Little League in the north side of Chicago, right off of the lakefront. And I grew up playing ball there. And then later on, after I got married, I joined another team. It happened to be a Christian team. It was a Christian league, so they had
Wow.
several teams from different churches, and we have actual leagues and stuff. And my first year, I had a chance to play. I won an award for best what was it called? I can't even remember what I won, but it was something. And baseball has always been a thing that my other thing that I enjoy that I've always
Okay.
enjoyed was that. Yeah.
Are you still playing baseball now?
No, I don't play ball anymore. But if we go off the field and someone says let's play ball, well, hey, let's go. I'm
All
down.
right. So you owe me a baseball game. All right. So
You
when I
play
come to Chicago, I don't. I actually have only played baseball maybe like since middle school. Maybe that's the last time I played baseball.
ball?
But
Okay.
since I know that you like baseball, when I come to Chicago, we can all play a game of baseball. You can get all your buddies and we can
Let's
go
do it.
do
Let's
it.
do it. Let's do
I'm
it.
serious. Listen, I keep my word. So don't
Okay.
be surprised when I ask.
I love playing ball. I haven't played in a minute, but I'll still have a mitt and we'll do some ball. Absolutely.
Awesome. So after you graduated high school, did you go to college, or what was going on after school was over?
So after school, my last year of school, I actually didn't finish. I had to go back and get my GED.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
my folks transitioned from the north side of Chicago to the south side, or the west side of Chicago, and it was during the middle of the school year.
Oh
The
no.
new school system wouldn't take me because it was that. They said, "Come on back." And Dad at the time was like, "You're gonna come to work then. You're gonna work with me." That was the old
Right.
school way of thinking, and I'm like, "Okay." And I went to work with him in the interim and just kind of put school in the back burner, and my folks didn't come, that generation wasn't really about pushing kids to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then later on, I said, I need to get my degree if I want to, and I went and finished, got my GED, finished my high school degree. And that's as far as I took it to school. Then
Okay.
never had to go for music school. And ironically, fast forward in today's days, I had the opportunity to go into some university. I've had university kids come in also here and
Wow.
speak to them about my career and what I do, give them a little peek of the behind the scene, and it's a great opportunity. I'm humbled by that.
That's awesome. I think people don't talk enough about going to get your GED. In my opinion, it's extremely hard to get your GED compared to just going to high school and going to a couple of classes and graduating.
It
How
is.
was your experience getting your GED
It
compared
was.
to not being in high school at the time?
Yeah, because you have a short window to prepare for.
Yeah.
And at least when I went, you were kind of on your own. I mean, you can ask the teacher who was going to conduct the exam some questions, but you were really like going back home and kind of refreshing your memory in books and reading, and so it made it tougher. It really did. But I was determined. I'm like, I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to get this and get done. I didn't want to drop out of school. That wasn't a thing that I didn't want to be like a lot of other statistics at the point that folks
Right.
want to go to school. No, I wanted to finish my school. College is just something we didn't really speak about at home. But I
Hmm.
did. My career, my mind early on was to become a law enforcement. I wanted to be a cop. And
Okay.
and so for me, it was like it was important to have my education so that when I took the exam, which I did, and I passed it twice. I did Chicago, passed the state of Illinois, but it just God said, no, this is what I want you to be at today. But I would have been a police officer. I probably would have been
Wow.
looking at retiring soon. That's about, that would have been my life
Wow.
right now. Yeah, and I'm grateful for where I am now. But yeah, GED wasn't an easy thing to do, but I do encourage. It's just, folks, it's almost like those who didn't finish college and they have like, I want to get my master's, and
Right.
later on in their 60s or 70s, you see them on stage as proud as like, a young kid getting their master's for the first time, and that's exciting. You get motivated by that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
have people older than me in my during undergrad, and I was like, wow. I mean, I felt like I was too old because, like I said, well, like I told you earlier offline, after I got out in the Marine Corps back in 2015, 2015, I was like 23. So going back there in undergrad and being like 24, 25, and you're with a bunch of 18-year-olds, it's
Yeah.
not a good vibe sometimes. I
Like,
felt like I was way older than them.
that's great. No, thank you for your service also. I know
Oh
Marines.
my God.
I actually wanted to be in the military as well, so I took the test for Navy. I was going to become a Navy officer,
What?
and I went in and did the paperwork. They called 2 weeks later that something happened there was a group of us that
Hmm.
they needed to bring us back in, and
Hmm.
by then my mom was crying, "Don't do it!" She was worried for my life. I'm like, there's no war at that time. It was like the best time. This is like in the mid '80s. It's like this
Oh
would have
wow,
been,
yeah.
yeah, it would have been fantastic. I would have gotten a career out of it. I would have, but
Got free schooling like me? Yep.
yeah.
That is a great benefit, I promise. I owe every degree to the military. That's why
That's
I have school paid for because of that. So I'm very grateful. And
that's
but then if you would have went to the military, do you think you would be where you are today?
Yeah, see, I think about that even if I was a cop, if I would have been a police officer, yeah, if I would have joined the military, I always think about where would I have been now. I have no regrets in my life where I'm right now. I'm in a very good place, and I have a beautiful family, I have beautiful kids, and I think that holds the weight of like I made the right decision because I
Right.
said, and now had the outcome been a little bit different, I would have said, yeah, maybe I should have, and I, it didn't work out, but. No, I'm good where I'm at now.
Well, I don't know if anyone has told you, but just speaking to you for the 20 minutes that we've been talking, I am extremely proud of you and I'm happy you've overcame so many things that you
Thank you.
did, that even that we haven't even talked about yet, but definitely proud of you and happy to have you on this platform. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you, Sharice. that's very humbling. Thank you.
My pleasure. So, when did you get your first gig in the industry? After high school, after trying out all these different career paths, when did it happen for you?
Wow. So if I'd say in production, because film came a little later, in production to produce my first talent, my first artist, were two ladies from Florida.
Okay.
Uh, a friend of mine was managing them, and he reached out and he says, "Hey, man, would you want to produce these two girls?" For me, I was like, "Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, absolutely."
Yeah.
When I was still working, I worked with the city of Chicago. I had worked landside operations and I was a manager in my role. And so I had a job. For me, it wasn't about money. It was just like, yeah, I get my first gig. And then he says, yeah, and then we'll pay you to do, we'll pay you per song. I'm like, oh, you're gonna pay me as well? Like that was like, great, because in my mind it's like I want to buy more gear, so I'll take that money, which is the side money, and reinvest it and buy more gear. I had a little
Yeah.
track, cassette recording machine. I had my own little keyboard. I had my own little Dr. Boss drum machine. So I had the idea, and by then I already had to play. Had the idea of how to play multiple instruments. So
Yeah.
I program everything, and I made $80 a song.
Wow. Well, back then, I don't know. Was that a lot
Oh,
of
that
money
was
back
okay. No, it wasn't. That wasn't. But I laugh about it now because it's like, yeah, that would, most people would have been like, "You did it for $80?" And I'm like, just got paid for it. It didn't make a difference whether it was 80 or 8,000. It would have been.
then?
It's just
Right.
that it was paid, and so it got me more of thinking differently. Like this could potentially be a profession. I can
Right.
actually establish a business doing this way. People are willing to pay. So that was my first gig with these two ladies out of Florida.
Okay, that's awesome. I don't want to pivot too far, but I would like to talk about this getting paid. I feel like there's a generation of us, maybe a couple generations of us, who we were okay with doing the work for free because eventually it's going to pay off. Like when I started doing internships, I wasn't looking for a stipend or anything. I just wanted to get involved in journalism. For me and for you, it's music. But I know nowadays, there's laws to help people get paid because you can't just like work for free. But I think we understand that if you have work ethic, the money will come eventually at some point. Versus now, the money needs to be there at the very first day when I start working for you.
You're right. That's
So,
exactly right. No, it's that's always been a hot topic. Even today, it's a hot topic, because there's always the upcoming musicians or upcoming career people. They're always looking for opportunity. It's the reason they have a lot of intern programs available for these corporations as a way to get people in to do their job for free. And
right,
so the indie artists, suffer from that ability to reach out to people and intern with them. So they're doing the work, and for them, it's like, let me just build my resume and focus on that, and I'll work doing something else to make money. It's the point becomes, or the question becomes, like, how long do you take that to? How long will you take that till you feel like, okay, at this point is when I need to start charging for my services, and you have to be ready for that, because you got to almost, you're educating people. You're also
right.
educating sometimes even the close friends to you, or people, your associates, your friends, your family, who now they want to use you because they're like, oh, yeah, you do a great job.
Yeah.
I need you to cut this track for me, and you drop a number at them, and they're like, are you going to charge me? And it's like,
Yeah, it's like the audacity, but it's like the audacity of you just telling me I need to do this for you. Like, don't you have enough respect for me to want to pay me for my work? So
exactly.
I agree with you.
And our creative space always, there's always a question. It's always underlying, like, well, who should be getting paid from creators? And and that's just fun stuff. You don't get paid to do fun stuff. And so yeah, you're constantly. I still to this day still having to educate many people. When I have these conversations and we're talking about the production, because you don't. There's a sense of not yeah, not realizing that this is actually work. This is a career path, and to make it a career path, you need things. You need the space. You got to pay for the space. You need
Yes,
I need equipment, and and it just works. And the other piece is that people who pay you, I see that they're having more value in the work that you deliver for them than when you don't pay. If they don't
right.
pay, that value is not there, and but you charge them now. There's an expectation. There's like, yeah, now it means a lot more to them than if they
Yeah,
didn't.
you're held to a certain standard too, because I would definitely, I'm gonna always give 100%. But if you're paying me to do this, well, now I gotta bring forth my A game because you're expecting what you're paying for as well.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
times but we're still dealing with some of that discussions.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of people are in every industry, to be honest.
Right? Yeah, absolutely,
So
and
this,
especially
go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, especially in this creative space that we're in.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. This next segment is called Digging Deeper. And so you just talked about your first gig. So after you got your first gig, how did you keep the momentum going? Because I know $80 was not enough for you at the time. So did you get more jobs? Or you continue working in you were working for the local government, you said?
The city of Chicago.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're working for the city, and like, did you continue working there while you were doing these smaller gigs, or how did everything go for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. The way it all transitioned for me was that so I had the city of Chicago job. I got married young. I got married at the age of 21, and I had my son by the age of 23.
Wow.
And at the same time that I was working a full-time job, um, and I was starting my family, and I was married. I was also a director at a church, music director.
Okay.
And then at the same time, I was producing artists, in my small little studio at home. So literally, it was, I get to work at 6 in the morning, and I get home by, 5 in the evening, and I'm jumping down in the studio and do my production work till midnight, 1 in the morning, to get back up at 5 in the morning or 4:30 to do the same thing over and over. And
Wow.
then midweek have to go to church and prepare the musicians, prepare the set list for the weekend service, and then you use your weekend just for the services, and so it was bogging down my life, my time, my quality time with home, with quality time with my family, with my kids, and my kids were demanding at that time because they were small, they were the
Right.
education level, and so I needed to make some decisions, and I had to sit and have some decisions with my wife about this, and like, do I walk away from a job that I've been 13, 14 years on. I had a full pension. I didn't pay for health insurance. It didn't call me. And working with the city particularly at that time, it was a big benefit. It was a great opportunity. And so, do I walk away from that and dive into music full time? Readjust, have to reset, my finances so it works for home, or do I have to make some decisions on letting some things go? And my wife was on board. She was very supportive to what I did, but she felt the pressure of the time that I was not available at home, to help out. My wife is also a career woman, and so she's at work full time, and so between us, having to work, take the kids to school, pick them up, take them to daycare, bring my son to work, and just all the above, we decided to take the step and make this a career, and leave corporate America. And when I did that, I had to look at my forecast of work, and I had six albums to produce at that time. So I had a decent forecast of work to do in addition to what the church was paying me as a music director. It was part time, but I was getting a salary. And so we decided, to take that step, and so, I had no idea about starting a business, and I wanted this to look as formal as any other business, though I'm
Mhm.
sole proprietor on my own. But I wanted to give the image to the clients when they came in and pay me that they're getting something creative, something musical, but they're dealing on a business level. And so I went to a business attorney law and sat with him, paid his 150 bucks an hour to spend, a few hours with him to kind of educate me in this process and what paperwork
Mhm.
I need to get ready, and my status, and all that stuff. And so I did it, went through that, and I probably waited about close to another year, and finally then gave my resignation letter to my company, the City of Chicago, and I took my pension money, ironically, I just got debt free. That was a key thing for me, was just make sure that I'm jumping this without no debt. Paid our bills off, and just started day one in the studio and kept working at the church. And now I had time with my kids and my family, and taking them to school, picking them up after, contribute. Not the best cooker, but I wanted to learn how to cook, so I did some cooking also. And so that decision, that business decision, to take it to the next level, was during that crucial period. Now there's more meat to the story,
Right.
but the synopsis is that, it was a family decision. It was a decision that I had to analyze for my future. Walking away from a career job, and walking on faith. It's a we all know this industry to do this. It's up and down, and so a lot of times, for us who have some faith, and I come from a Christian background, and it's like a lot of this is I walk on faith, trusting God that when the phones aren't ringing by the end of the month, it's going to be ringing right after that month. I'm just believing it's happening, and so it's been that for now, a little over 23 years since I dove into this career
Wow.
full time. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Without digging too deep into your personal life, how was that commitment from your family? Because I think a lot of people forget that, if you have a family when you're making these career moves, that impacts them too. Like, were your kids young enough to understand what was going on? That, dad, he has to go over there and produce some stuff. We can't have him here right now. Like, how did that go?
yeah, that was challenging. It was initially challenging because the demand I had from clients, from paying clients and the church, and it was taxing on my family time. So, we had to, the one thing that I had to learn is quality
Mhm.
time. Quality timing at home, right? It wasn't, Laura, let me get upstairs, sit down, watch a movie with my family. I did it, and that's it. No, I was really spending time with my kids, and spending time with them during homework, and then with my wife, let's go out to dinner, let's talk life. And because if not, then what was starting to snowball was the tension in our relationship, in our home. And
Yeah.
that's a fact that I'm pretty comfortable about talking about now, because I know other people and friends that I know from the past that have had to go to similar scenarios. They took the other option, and they end up with broken homes, sad, and they regret
Mm.
their decisions. They got some success in their career, their musical careers, but they look back and then now have a different value, like the value of home and family. And so for me, it was like analyzing what's more important. I don't live in a music city. I'm not in LA. I'm New York. I could have made that decision with my wife and just say, hey, we got to move. But then I'm
Yeah.
compromising again my home for my own. And I had to think, it's my home. It's one. I started relationship at home. I started a family young. I got married young. So that commitment started. I can't tread backwards now and I shouldn't have, you shouldn't. And I said, well, let me press forward, and spoke with some friends that were in a better level spiritually about it, and get some good talk and conversation. And so I learned a lot. It's the balancing home, music, family is not an easy task for many, because this creative space can demand weird times and weird schedules.
Yes.
But if you develop and learn quality time with your family, they'll appreciate what you do. It's not going to feel too bad. So they know when you're in overtime mode. My first film cost me 80 hours a week, and I
Wow.
was practically sleeping here in the studio. And thankfully, my studio's at home, but it's still 80 hours a week. And I didn't realize how many hours until my wife was telling me. She was keeping the track of the hours. And if we weren't in a good place at this time, it would have been like, yeah, what's up? Where am I? Where am I? Home, what's going on? And thankfully it's not that. Now I have 100% plus support from my family. They're my number one fans, thankfully.
That's awesome. I'm happy, so happy for you.
Thank
Now,
you. Thank you.
speaking of your journey, can you tell us how you went from using secondhand equipment to building your own first production studio in 2001?
Okay, the audio just clipped there a second. Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Can you talk about your journey from using secondhand equipment to building your first production studio in 2001?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My first recording gear cost me $167 used, and I put it on layaway because I didn't have a lot of money. I had what I had to pay. for it, and it cost $167. It was a 4-track recording machine, but it lit me up to want more, get better, and then save when I could on my gigs so that I could keep expanding and keep adding onto my equipment and getting better gear. As it kind of grew with me, as I learned more, the better equipment came along, all the way until, yeah, like 2001, building my first studio in Chicago.
Hmm.
Um, that was it was it was semi built just because it was in the lower levels of my home, but it was partially
Oh
finished, so
no.
it was just fixing some things up, and then I was able to record there. But the problem there was that since it wasn't totally isolated from the acoustics from home, when my kids were upstairs, if I'm recording, I could hear them. I had hardwood floor, so it was like dun, 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 dun. So if I had the microphones open in a session, like, yep, stop, can we redo that again? Run upstairs real quick. Hey guys, stay still for the half hour.
Right.
Um, and so fast forward when I built this studio, and that was in 2000. Let's see, I moved in here around 2006. I bought a new construction, and I had met with the builders to do some specs that I needed for a studio, like exterior door, roughing for the bathrooms. And so I started that, and the first thing I was considering is the noise elements at home.
Yeah.
You can run and do whatever, and that sound will not travel down into the studio, and vice versa. If I'm playing with a live band or whatever, you can't hear it upstairs. So
That's great.
yeah,
That's great.
so
So since you're a producer, it's really been burning me to ask you who you work with. Can you name some of the people or films that you've produced for?
yeah, so that's it. It's always a thing about that. I've never chased, how would you say, I never chased Hollywood. I've never
Okay.
chased the desire to do that. I've always chased the desire to be able to do music full time. That's my first thing. Whatever came along after then, it's an
It's a
additional
plus.
accolade. Yeah, it's a blessing. It's something on top. Oh, you get this for this? Okay, great. But I've worked on some TV shows. Thankfully, later on when I got into the film, I've done stuff for like Super Nanny Show, Judge Mathis, Foodie Show, Murder for Hire, Who Do You Think You Are? Shows are on WNBC, and
Mhm.
they're on all the various Netflix or networks, streaming networks. Some of my corporate, Rust-Oleum is one of my corporate gigs or client. I don't know if you know them, but they're the ones you'll find their product in all the like Home Depots. They're big
Okay, okay.
hand.
I shop in Home Depot often. So
Okay, so next time you see a Rust-Oleum, that hopefully they'll remind you, yeah, of this. I do music for them on
wow.
some promotions, and worked with. There's a group called Some by Four back in I think in the '90s. It was a boy band. Yeah, boy, it's Angel Lopez. I produced a track for him.
Okay.
American Idol, Devin Velez. I did a couple songs for him. He's one of my favorite guys to work with. By the way, he's such a great voice.
Yeah.
You come in the studio and the guy is just like, and he was at the time he was while he was in the Idol, he was a fan of Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey just loved him because
Hmm.
he was known for singing a song, and midway through the song, he would sing the chorus in Spanish, and
Wow.
did something to her to lit it up and or lit up the whole audience, and so he's till this day he's a great singer, and so yeah, and there's hundreds of other projects that I've done, and historically, I just sometimes don't keep a track, can't remember unless I go into my catalog. Oh yeah, I did work for this thing. I did that. I think now I remember I did some guitar work here for oh my God, what's her name from Hannah Banana Banana what
Hannah Montana, the
yeah,
Disney. Oh,
right.
and Miley Cyrus.
Sorry, my God, I blinked out her name. Please tell me. Yeah, we did some guitar work for her here for
Wow.
stuff there. And so all those things, and the musicians I've worked with, I mean, they're, like I said, they played with the greatest, like Babyface. I had a chance to
Yeah.
audition. But I have my band director is a good friend of mine. His drummer is a good friend of mine. I went to a bunch of his shows, and those guys got Grammy-winning engineers who I work with closely. And yeah, just tons of that. But I forget those names. Honestly, I just forget those names because I just get involved in the work.
Hey, that's what matters the most, doing the work. Yeah.
Totally.
No, I understand.
Because there's people who do. I know stories that I got friends who have worked with all these big names as well, and they're like starving musicians nowadays because it's a sad
Yes.
industry that we get older and they want the younger look on stage many times. So we just kind of become the past, no matter how good we play.
Right, right. No, I honestly, I feel like in some industries it's just that way, especially entertainment business. Like they're always looking for the newest, most energetic young person ever. And then it's like, but what about the people who've been doing this for like 30 years? What about them? You know? So
Yeah,
I get
it's an image.
it.
And it's the reason why I drove when you went back to the business transition for myself. It's the reason I switched. I was a gigging musician, and I had a lot
Yeah.
of opportunities, to record in the studio. I was being trained and getting the knowledge of what it means to jump in recording studio as a musician versus on stage. And I took all that, but I had to, I had some point to think if I want to make this business career, then I need to think differently, and it's not just about the gig. Now it's production, setting myself as a business. So a lot of guys that I know just stuck the musician part of it, and that's where I was able to make it a career because of that. Because now it's production that I'm looking at. It's not so much about how many shops, how good am I when I play my instrument. It's more about the quality of the work being delivered to the client.
Very true. Now, what are some differences in your opinion that separate producing music for film and TV compared to creating music for someone's album per se?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you work with an artist, the vibe is always about the artist. It's about their song, their image, that the music fits their style, that it fits, them, because and if it's an upcoming artist or an artist that's coming out for the first time, you're almost developing that with them. You're trying to figure out what what sounds good for them. Does this song fit your style? Does your voice sound good in this kind of vibe? Does it beat the genre work with you? And having those conversation with the talent to get them there. Um, and when you do, and then also you're also kind of I always say you're almost like this musician shrink, because you're dealing with a person that you're constantly having to, you know, dealing with like their personality changes if it's a bad day. You're in the studio, something's happening, they're not vibing, and you're trying to figure out. So you're being the counselor, you're being the encourager, you're the motivator. Producers, the way I came up as a producer to what I see a lot now, sometimes is much different. It's because the mindset nowadays is a lot of times is you produce a beat, drop it, let the artist sing it. I mean, I've seen that so often. It's like, no, I've learned that you're with the artist from day one to the deliverables until you're done. And so you're developing relationships, you're building that relationship, you're understanding when they're having a bad day, a good day, what's working with them, what's not. And then when you take a film and you put a picture, what I call a picture in front of you, now you're vibing on what you're seeing. And
Right.
that is generally that you're writing music to. Many times it's a discussion you've had with the director, and you create what they call spotting sessions, and you're spotting the film. You're watching the film together, and you're spotting areas where the director might feel, hey, I'd love to have an undertone music here, or something heavy, or a song in this part here, from this part to this part, and you're taking that direction. And sometimes they'll say, hey, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm kind of feeling, but run with it,
Right.
wherever else you feel. And so you're now developing a music to a film, to a picture, is like creating another movie. It's like creating another story because your music is telling a story,
Yeah.
and it needs to ride with what the scene is saying and showing it, not and screw it up. You're gonna hear about it right away, and so the vibe is different, and now you're dealing with the picture, now with the person, other than the director. But the director, they do their diligence. They see who might work for their picture, and they'll reach out and they're like, this guy might work for us. I might be a good candidate, and start telling the story, but using music instead, which I love. It's why I do it now. It's become such a big thing. The first time I did one in my first film, I like, my God, this, I've heard always some stories about composers, a big composer. Like, if it's a movie it's a movie with a powerful story, a drama, and there's tear jerker scenes in there, and if while you're writing, it pulls tears out of you while you're writing music, you're doing good. And that did that to me. My first,
Wow.
it really did
Do
that.
you mind sharing that story?
Oh,
What project were you working on?
yeah, so my first film was called Noel the Jewel, and I got a call from the producer out in Los Angeles and said, "Hey man, you come highly recommended. I heard some of your music. I know this would be the first time you're working on a film, but we have one. We'd love to bring you on board if you're interested." I'm like, "Will you tell me a little bit more?" So he tells me the narrative of the story. It's actually a based on a true story, but there was some twist on it in the film for film format. But it was a sad true story, and they said the director's based out of India, so it's an international film. It's going to be shot in English and Malayalam, India language, and we need it in 30 days. so so I said, yeah, no problem, done. Boom, hang up the call, and I kid you not, I sat back in the studio and I just freaked out, and I said, what did I just say yes to? I just totally I drew blank for a moment. I'm like, I've never done film.
Right.
I don't, and I had to have this process, think into this process in my mind, and finally realize, oh wait, I know how to make music. I know how to record music. I know how to arrange music. I know how to compose. Really, it's just a technicality of it. How do
Yeah.
I send the files? What's the format? What happens next? Now that I said yes, the conversations I'm going to have with the director, and understand what he wants. So now I'm dealing with learning the technicality. So I put that like in the back burner for me. So I'm going to start music. I got 30 days to knock this out in two languages. That's a
Mhm.
very schedule. So that's
Yeah.
when the 80 hours a day or 80 hours a week was coming out, because I probably sleep 2 3 hours a day in the morning, and then I circle that whole event. I'd be in the studio till the next morning, 6 7 in the morning. And so the film was based on a true story. It's sad, and it has scenes in there where there's a female, which is played by a good friend, Reem Kadam. She's out of Los Angeles. She was the lead actress. And so there were scenes in where she's in prison, and there's no dialogue. It's just her pacing the ground, because without me spoiling this yet, but she's sentenced to death,
Oh
and now
man.
the time is clicking, and all it is her pacing, thinking in her mind, hey, the next step is going to happen. So obviously, music is going to play a huge role there,
Yeah.
because the only thing you might hear is some what you call room tone, what it would sound like in a prison cell while they're walking back and forth, the steps. And so that's when it really lit up about understanding how music, if it's told wrong, it's going to mess up the scene. The scene's not going to look right either. This what the director wanted is also being told wrong, and I messed it up, and so I'm going to get fired. And so, ironically, that same film, at the last scene, the director says to me, "Hey, this scene is the vital scene. She's sentenced. This is where this whole story ends up at,
Yeah.
and music has to be on point. It has to be. People got to feel this. They got to. So I wrote the piece, and every time I saw the scene, it was from her walking out of cell into the hallway of the prison, all the way to this huge courtyard where she's going to be hung. And I'm watching the scene, and I felt less is more in this scene. Like, I felt the picture was saying so much that I didn't want to mess it up. I don't, so I wrote the piece very with an undertone of some piano with a dark resonance. So every time you hit it, you had this like, you hear this ringing, but
Yeah.
it's very dark, so it's not sharp enough to just you're attracted to the scene, and you're helping the viewers get connected here. So I write the part, I send it to the director. 2 days later, he writes me and he says, "I'm very disappointed in you, Annette. I'm very disappointed." And I'm reading this message. By the way, we're 10 difference, right? And I was standing up, I sat down, I just got fired. In my mind, I just got fired. I
Right.
write a message to my wife. I said, "Hon, I don't know what." what this means. And she says, well, just do another piece for him, what he's asking. And I sat down and I got behind, and it was the scariest feeling. I had this eerie feeling in me about writing anything to it. But I felt strong about what I wrote. Like I said, this is moving me. I mean, it's doing something to me personally as I'm watching this scene. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep that same tone, but I'm just going to add some extra elements. And so I underscored it with some strings. And I have to believe, and I have to make him believe that you got to listen to this again. Look at, and I did just that. And I sent it to him, and I said, God, here it goes. And I remember saying after I uploaded the file and connected him to the account, and I remember saying, Jesus' name, I just send.
Yeah,
As I,
some
what
faith
happened,
today.
yeah, I sat down. I didn't hear from him for 3 days. 3 days later, I get a message from him, and he says, Eddie, thank you for making me cry.
Wow.
He said, thank you for making me cry. And and to me it was like a seal of approval, of like I can do this because I'm understanding how to write music to a picture, to a story, to something else. Now I'm not dealing with just an artist, a beat, something that's catchy, the hook. Now it's about the storytelling with the music. And so I wrote that, and lo and behold, I received very a lot of awards, or plenty of awards, as best original score on on that film.
Wow, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
a testament to your faith. I mean, we
Yes.
started talking out about you started talking about faith in the beginning of this interview. So now
Yes.
it's actually showing how you used your faith. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, a lot of that.
So do you have any rituals that you normally do to prepare and get in the zone for your music, like when you're composing and things like that?
So, like, if I'm working with an artist, and I'll use one of my clients that I mentioned, Devin Velez, American Idol. There was a piece of music, there was a Christmas song that he had written. It was his first song actually writing. And he says to me, I got this song. This is what I'm feeling. I'm kind of feeling a Michael Bublé vibe to it. And in my mind, okay, I get the vibe. Okay, yeah, I'm listening to, yeah, okay, I got it. So I already got the music vibe into me. So I write this introduction, and I get in there, and I'm like, but Michael, for holidays, he's doing these orchestrated, magical kind of an entrance, and then it just drops to him on piano and vocals. And so I
Yeah.
write piece with that, but all I do is the introduction, and I go to the beginning of the first verse. Stripping it down, I cut it down, and I send it to him. I send it to Devin, and I say, "Hey, man, take a listen and let me know if I'm on point with this." And he calls me back, and he says, "Man, that's beautiful. How did you come up with that?" I said, "Well, you mentioned this and that," and I'm like, "Yeah." And I said, "Does it work for you?" And he says, "No." And I said, "What do you?" Yeah, he says, that's not what I want. And I'm like, what do you mean that's not what you want? You gave me some, you express, and you gave me samples. This is what you want. This is, and he said, but he said, I don't know how to express it, but I need something that's kind of corny. I said, corny? That's a word. I said, I don't know this word corny for music. And so I need a couple weeks, to think about this and just kind of reset my mind. And a couple weeks later, I came and I started writing a piece of music. And I started with the guitar, acoustic guitar, came up, and I was in the zone. I wrote it all the way through. And I said, this time I want him in the studio to listen, because I want to have this dialogue if I'm still off. And so he came into the studio. I hit play. As soon as it got the introduction, the intro didn't even go halfway, and he jumped up. Yes, that's it. That's it. And it was just like, okay, great. This is a way to know that I'm on point, with creating music. But your question was to relating to how getting in the zone. So listening to music that sometimes the director or the artist would kind of, I'd go and kind of sit back and listen to some music and kind of get a vibe. With film, man, it's like I dim down. I already work in low lighting, but I really dim down the studio,
Mhm.
and I back and I listen to scores, and I
Wow.
feel like listening. And it wasn't something that I like trained. This is what I should do. It's just when I did my first film, I was trying to do that. When you run into like what they call writer's block,
Yeah.
and you're feeling, okay, I'm not. It's like I'm not. I sit back. I have to take step back for a half hour, sometimes even an hour, and just close my eyes and listen to score. And all of a sudden, I come back and I feel I wake up, or not wake up, but I like come back with this inspirational. Like I come back very inspired to like, okay, I'm in the zone. Now I'm in the zone. I feel I already know where to go, and I just dive in. And so those are the things that kind of work for me in writing music. It's always about my place where I'm at. The right lighting, the right tone. Not I'm focused on music. I'm not looking at any calls or receiving anything. Just focusing on that. Shut the phone off for a little bit, and that always helps.
Yeah, cutting off the distractions.
Yes, cutting out. Yep, that definitely helps.
Now, for someone who's probably watching this or listening to this, and they're like, "Man, I want to be like Eddie one day." What is some advice that you would give someone who wants to be in this industry, or at least
One
get their foot in the door?
Yeah, no, no, yeah, that's a great question because one of the things that I've always have done, and later on in life, I heard one of the guys I admire in film, actor Denzel Washington, what he says, consistency. Is being consistent is key because today's generation, a lot of things, the expectation is that the results of what you do should be coming quick. You do a project, you should get signed, or you should, should be a hit right off the bat, and it doesn't work that way. So, but what I discover is that being consistent in my work every day, my same routine, how I start my day, how I end my day, how I prepare music, how I communicate with my clients, how I look at my business, and what strategies do I need to focus on to get myself in front of people, that the decision makers, the guys who sign checks, and that consistency is still to this day and is a practice for me. So, which ties into the business mindset of the creative guy. The creative person sometimes just don't get that part of it. So doing that, and what has always worked also for me is just you don't have to master everything. You can master one of what you do, but understand if you're going to be a producer, the producer has a lot in his plate, a lot of things that happen in production that you don't have to master, but you should be able to give people direction in. If you're working with the artist, you should have some experience to work with the vocalist. If it's harmonies, if you're limited, then you look for the source to help you. But either way, it's your responsibility. Learn to do that. If it's recording, understanding your gear, okay, what's an input, what's an output, and when do you apply compression? When do you use your plugins, when do you use outboard gear, and your editing, knowing your software, when you're editing audio and you're, punching in, punching out. I come from the school where I didn't have screen monitors. It was my ears. And we had machines that play, punch in, record, and if you missed into punch in, there was no undo buttons. You just get a very disappointed client behind the glass that's saying, I don't know if I can recreate that moment, and that becomes a problem. So I didn't grow up listening. The speaker monitors and my ears were my tool and my instrument while I'm recording. But I learned to do that so that as a producer, I get that and I can educate. If I bring an engineer, I make sure they're on point with it, So mastering not everything, master the role that you're sitting in. If you're a composer, master that. If you're a producer, master that, and then learn the territory of all that comes with that job, with that responsibility. It makes you much stronger. I watched a documentary recently with Quincy Jones, one of my favorite composer and producers,
Mhm.
and it was when they released it on Netflix about "We Are the World." I don't know if you got a chance to see it. I forgot what the title is, but
I haven't
it's
seen it yet, but I will definitely take a look at it.
take a look at it because it tells you see him in action working with what 30 to 50 A-lister singers, and he in one night he got to produce all these vocals. He's got to the engineer and the recording, and then the recording cameras and videos, and he's got to keep everything. And the first thing he does is slaps a sticker on the door when people come in, check the eagles at the door.
I know that's right because A-listers, I know,
A-listers with no reps, none of their reps, their managers. It was just them with
oh,
other A-listers. So everyone felt strange. So he had to manage this, and look at that song just went viral.
yes,
So
it did. It's a great
that's
song.
one of the things I would suggest.
Okay, awesome. What are some new projects you're currently working on that you can share with our listeners?
Oh, sure. So um, there's a few that I'm working on currently, and there's a feature film that was shot here in Chicago. I'm pretty excited about. It's called 40 Before 40. And we're just diving actually now in post production. They finished shooting. The director was nice enough. She said, "I want you to do some cameos." So she brought me into a couple scenes here and there, just
Nice.
a little cameo, walking through or a scene or something. So 40 Before 40 feature film. We're in post production. I just recently connected with another film director who's also a singer, and he writes his own songs. And when he saw that I did also produce, and I was just not just composing film, he hired me on to produce his single. And so we just that's going to get released now in February. I
Okay.
think for Valentine's weekend, I believe. And his name is Sean Ullman, and the song is called "Hopeless Searching," and it'll be on your major, platforms. Working on this other film, we just finished this song that's going to be part of a scene. The film is called "Unvaccinated." It was shot already and released a couple of years ago or so, as a short film
Okay.
format. Now the director's shooting it as a feature film, so there's a scene, and he wanted me to write this song. It's kind of a Daughtry song, Daughtry vibe. So it's got
Mhm.
this rock Daughtry. So I had a friend of mine who's part of a band called Fourth Point Band. His name is Matt Ellis, and I had him co-write with me, and I had him be the lead voice on the song. So we just finished mastering that song and just sent it to the director last week, and he's like, "Oh, this is great." So that's out. I'm working on another project that's going to be a feature film with my first experience with a faith-based production company called they're called Intrigue, Intrigue
Wow.
Intrigue Films, and the film is going to be called Barrio. A friend of mine who's actually an author, and so he got signed on to do. They're going to do a feature film on him. That might be hitting the big screens, and but that's still they're in script mode right now. So
Okay.
in script, so that'll be in the mid. That'll probably maybe next year it'll be out.
Okay.
Um, and then I also am also we just did we're in the midst of an audiobook. Ironically, I'm already tapping.
Wow.
It's going to be a Christmas audiobook, and it's going to be magical kind of thing. We'll have some voiceover there, some voiceover talents. We just finished doing the narration sessions last week,
Hmm.
but I'm working on some music for that where it sounds like Disney underscored kind of a thing. And then I'm also sitting as a producer and composer for hopefully we're shooting for a TV show, and it's called The Slayers and the Vampires, and ironically, it's going to have some messages in there. It's like, uh, we're on IMDb already. You can look it up, but basically, fallen angels, evil against bad, fallen angels,
Wow.
and here on Earth, and so it's gonna be a great TV show. So we're in development on that now, and like I said, I'm composer on that, but I'm also was brought in as one of the lead producers. So a lot of admin work with
Yeah.
that one. I'm already working with a good friend of mine who was in Hollywood. He filmed with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was all in Miami
Wow.
Vices. He's a stunt director, a stunt coordinator, martial artist. He's got his degree. His name is Tony De Leon, a
Okay.
great guy, a great friend, and so he wrote this as his story, and he brought me in as his lead producer as well. So those are some of the stuff that I'm working on. There's some other stuff that'll be docu-series format. That those are in post productions,
Hmm.
and that I know I'm giving you a lot, but these are some of the stuff that I can talk about that are developing. There's a lot of stuff that's developing as we speak as well.
That's so awesome. You're like, oh no, this is that's a lot, and it's extremely great, and I'm so happy for you.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
man.
I'm grateful.
At first,
I'm
I thought
humbled.
you were gonna say like, "Oh no, I'm just work." You're like, "But no, I'm working on this. I'm working on that." Wow, how do you? When do you get to sleep? Like,
Right, exactly. Time management. Time management. I'll always go beyond the work, and I'm grateful to have a wife that's very understanding. My kids are already they're on their own, but she's a career woman also, 40
mhm.
plus years on her job, and
Wow.
if I need to work later. I always dedicate our dinner time. That's for sure. I'm going to shut
Oh,
off have dinner. And if we have extra time, because sometimes she has to log in after hours too, and so like it works out. I'm like, oh, I got to go on for another couple hours or so, and jump out to the studio and do some more work. So, yeah, because I guess it's different when you love what you do, right? If you
right.
love what you do, then time is nothing, but it doesn't bother you. You just gotta manage it so it doesn't affect the rest of your life.
Shout out to your wife because she's awesome.
Juanita, my wife Juanita, that's her name.
Well,
Shout out to
I am
my
gonna.
beautiful wife Juanita.
Yes, shout out to Mrs. Juanita. All right. So I saw on your website that you're a Grammy voting member. How does someone get the honor bestowed upon them to do something great as that?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah, that is an honor. I've been now doing that for I've been for I think a little over 10 years. The Academy came by a conversation I had with another friend of mine, music producer,
Hmm.
and he had mentioned he observed the work that I was doing, and he says, "Dude, you ever considered becoming a member of the Academy?" And in my mind, I'm like, "No." I'm like, "How?" I was clueless. I didn't know about that. Didn't have no idea how that goes. And he says, if you have enough credits, the Academy will accept you as a voting member. There's two tiers. There's members and then there's voting members.
Okay.
And it drew my attention. I'm like, well, that would be an honor. I'll be great. So I submitted some of my work to the Academy. They had to go through this whole verification. My work had to be commercial credits. The process is a little bit different now than it was back then. But back then, you had to have a certain amount of commercial credits. They verified everything, and I was accepted in. They welcomed me as a voting member, and been doing it all the way since over 10 years now. And I had the honor. They flew me. I was part of the most important process at the time. Was to get flown out to Beverly Hills and sat in with some of the biggest guys. I had breakfast with Rodney Jerkins and
Oh
some of
my
the
gosh.
brothers. Yeah, and just meeting, and we were all the same hat. We were doing the same thing. We were all voting and we were all assigned to different committees.
Mhm.
And so I was actually in the gospel contemporary Christian music committee, and they had their different areas. So that's how I got in and been a member since then.
Wow.
And it's a blessing.
So my next question, before I move forward, is with these two tiers, you got voting members and then you have regular members. What are the regular members doing compared to the voting members?
So regular members get some benefits to like they have sometimes like discounts. They may even sometimes allow you to purchase tickets to Academy show to one of the
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
but it just becomes a support. You get more information. Part of the academy, you get to be a voice in the academy. And so, whereas a voting member, we're actually submitting our votes for the candidate. So the process is there's a date where people submit. Those who can submit, guys who are like myself, we can submit our work or work that we've worked on in production,
Mhm.
and for consideration of a nomination. The next phase is that after the academy reviews it, they decide if it fits, and they'll either welcome you or say no, you don't qualify. If you qualify, then you get now considered a nomination, right? So there's to be considered a nomination and then the nomination. Then the last phase is, well, during that nomination period is when we get a chance to vote. Okay, yeah, this work, this client or this artist had good product. We check yes or no,
Mhm.
and pick the best candidates for it. And then at the very end is the final. So you have like three phases before the final vote is submitted for, and then you hear who actually won when it's televised.
Okay,
It's
cool.
a little bit more involved. There's several voting tiers that and process that we got to go through, and that's what I
Wow.
do.
That's
That's all.
awesome, man. That's really awesome.
Oh, thank you.
What is the best award you've received so far and why?
So my best award is has to do with the fact that I did win my first award. It was the movie we spoke about, Noel the Jewel, the best original score. If I can set this scene up quickly, I was in Amsterdam when well, here, back. I'm sitting on my couch on a Sunday evening.
Mhm.
I'm watching TV with my wife, and I get a text from the director. It's morning for him, and he says to me, "Hey, did you get my message?" And I said, "No, what message? Check your email." I check my email. So you've been nominated for best original score of the film. And I responded to him, and I said, "Is this real?" I'm like, "Want anything? What is this?" And he says, "No, I couldn't think of a better person in our production than you that won this. We saw how hard you worked, and the music really did a magic to our film." So I said, "Wow." So what happens next? He said, "Well, I need you to fly down to Amsterdam." So they fly me down to Amsterdam. We have this. It was a film festival week, and at the end of the week, they have the ceremony. So now we're in the ceremony. There's about close to 1,000 people in this room, and they start. just like the shows, they start putting out the films that are been nominated in their categories. They got to my film, and all along, my wife has said to me, Did you bring an index card with your thank you list?" Win. I just got nominated. That's good for me. I'm in my. I was happy just the nomination. I get there, and our film pops up, and the winner is Eddie Torres, Nuwalda Jewel, best original score. And I couldn't get up. I'm at the table with the director, some of the cast member, the other producers, and I just kind of froze. And they're like, "Hey, you gotta go give your speech." And I gave my speech, and I forgot out of all the people that I should be thanking outside of God, is the director. So
Oh my goodness.
I mouth into the director, and I felt like a heel. I feel horrible. I apologized later, and I said, if I ever win again on this film, I guarantee you and promise you, you'll be the one of the first that will come out of my mouth. And sure enough, later on in London, that film was nominated again, and I won. And I made sure to thank him for that win. So the award is this guy here. I set it on the side so you can kind of get an idea.
Wow, thanks for sharing that.
A little weight to it. And this is Amsterdam International Film Festival 2018 winner, Best Original Score, Eddie Torres, Nuwalda Jewel. And this is the most memorable one because it was the first one I've ever won. Not thinking I'd ever win anything on particularly in film, but I was motivated, inspired by this to happen. There's one more. I know you said one, but there's one more because recently I received this guy, um, and
Oh my
this
goodness.
this one also got a little weight. This one was Eddie Torres, award-winning film composer of the year, Hall of Fame inductee 2024. So I was inducted to a Hall of Fame in Texas from the MMAM, and again, this is like I got inducted to me for a Hall of Fame. I'm like, oh, I thought that happens when you die, like in and so that one I received last year, and at the end of last year, and I couldn't believe it when they received. So I had to fly out to Dallas, a beautiful ceremony, and they're driven a lot with in the film with martial artists, and so a lot of the people that I now have developed relationship with were guys of films that I used to see as a kid, and even later on, and they're great film actors, and some of them actually are going to be part of the film, the TV show I was mentioning,
Wow.
the Slayer of the Vampires.
Well,
So
congratulations. That's
thank you,
amazing.
thank you, thank you so
And
much.
you
It's
are
an honor.
so humbled, and I just love that about you. Like, that's amazing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
This next segment is called Shout 'em Out. And so, could you tell our listeners the name of a nonprofit that you believe is making a difference in in its community?
Yeah, sure. So I have a dear friend. The organization is called From the Barrio to the Boardroom. A friend of mine is an author. He's had this organization, not-for-profit organization, where it's made an impact. It's grown to make an impact all over the world. And he developed a curriculum for school. He developed his books got into the prisons. His organization is about making a difference in kids' lives. He's a speaker at many, he's had TED Talks, and his organization is something that I support, and we're going to be making the film on, which I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
We're going to see, you'll be able to see when it hits the big picture more of a story because it's a story of, from nothing to something,
Yeah.
and he comes from East LA, and now he lives in my neck of the woods. And so this is an organization that they're about making differences. They're connected with another guy I met who's also a dear friend now, Freso Kendo. He's a heavyweight boxing championship, and he's got an organization that united with him. It's like doing this ripple effect, and you go to the website, you'll see it. You'll see me as well, by the way. But anyway, so the ripple effect of how it's making a difference. So Freso Kendo now does his organization is about getting the kids off the streets, and he trains them in boxing, just like just younger kids just come in and giving him the opportunity of like, hey, come on, you want to be a boxer? Let me show you how it's done, and so they're all this with his name is Dr. Robert Renteria from Barrio, from the boardroom to the barrio to the boardroom, and he's made his voice very, very powerful and impacting in many lives. You can type his name up, Google his name, and you'll see all the media that's drawn into the work he has done. And he's very passionate about, about you meet him, he's going to tell you right away about the barrio. It's like he dives into it, and it's an organization that I know and I've seen firsthand how it's making an impact in a lot of community, a lot of young lives, and until this day, he's still at it. He's still at it. So
And this organization is in Chicago.
yeah, so it's
Okay.
Chicago based, but if you go to the website at www.fromthebarrio.com, you'll see first you'll see a picture of him with all these young kids. They even made a theater play out of his story. It was the coolest thing ever. And you'll see a lot about where he's come and the impact that he's made in hundreds and thousands of lives, including including I'm sorry, and including a little sad story of this young child, this young girl who had cancer at a young age and passed away. The barrio made an impact to her life. She became like she would sleep with the book next to her bed, because the story, everything, and this is the impact that just like you when you see these type of impacts in people's life, you're like, man, I love what he does and he's about. So that would be one I'd say.
That's great. Do you serve in your community? And if so, where are some places that you volunteer at?
Well, so Barrio is one of them. Robert Renteria, working with him wherever I could go and help him and the organization make a voice, and whether it's bringing in. Recently, we had he asked us to bring a couple people into the studio. One lady and her daughter. The child, the mother was a victim of a drunk driver. She was a hit and run. We had to carry her husband and I, we had to carry her down into the studio in a wheelchair. So she's crippled for life. But her daughter wanted to know about the industry, and so I spent time with her and here in the studio, and we spent a couple hours just talking about what I do, and so definitely again from the barrio is an organization that I love serving, and along with church ministry.
Yeah.
Churches, I do get paid at ministry, but there's oftentimes when they don't. They don't have funds for an event, and
Right.
they'll ask, and yeah, this is where I grew up when, so it's not, the ministry has become part of my career, but it's not all about the money. It's about making a difference, and whatever I can do to be part of that element and help out, then those community churches is where definitely available and been available for umpteen years.
This final segment is called Rants with Sharice, and this is one of my favorite segments of my podcast. So during Rants with Sharice, you get to complain about anything that you want, or mention something that truly gets under your skin. And then after you're done telling us about what gets under your skin or what really upsets you, you have to give us an example of what not to do or how to um, provide a solution for whatever it is that you don't like. And it can be anything. It can be people not using washcloths, people not using signal lights while they're driving, like whatever you want, the floor is yours.
Oh my gosh. That's a good question, and it's a tough question to answer for me. I don't know. I've always been the person to. I'm more of the guy who, if there's a problem, I don't get aggressive about it. Let's how can we resolve this issue? But as a music director in ministry, I've been music director in a few different churches, a few different times, and one of my pet peeves has always been the band not coming prepared, the team not coming prepared at call time. So I, and my team, my pet peeve has always been this: if we give you the materials in enough time to prepare, then I've always seen rehearsal date, the day we iron out the rehearsal. With iron out, the key.
Right.
You should know your song. You should know at least your parts. You should know what's next, and let's work through it, clean it out. Not what song are we doing? How does that go? Oh, I don't remember it. Oh, I've never heard it. Oh, I didn't have time. And it's not so much that the one case. It's the constant. There's an old saying of past behavior predicts future behavior.
Yep.
And when you see that, those are my pet peeves, because I'm like, man, I know I'm very busy, and I take the time to be prepared. Even now, the with everything that's going on, like the for the past month and a half, I've been on set every weekend, Saturday and Sunday. There's
Hmm.
three events that I'm playing every weekend at two different church campuses, and it doesn't matter if all I have time is to sit on the sofa. I had time to sit down and have dinner, and after that, it's time to go to bed. I will pause and just put my headphones and I'm going through the material, reading my charts, getting ready. So I have a concept. So when I grab my instrument down here and I'll start practicing, I already got an idea. And the last person I want them to look at when rehearsal time comes in is me.
Right, right.
So that's been a pet peeve of mine forever. And again, it's when and even if I'm not leading right now, just playing, it still bothers me because I'm like, there's a team here. We should all have some preparedness, especially when you got the material in advance. So
I
the
agree.
other, yeah, okay, you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say. So I totally agree with you. I think like coming to something unprepared, it makes the process even longer. You know. So, what is your solution for unprepared people, especially a part of the team in the being a part of a band or a church group? What would you propose for them to do?
It's the dedication. I'm like, for me, it's like if you're using me as an example, like, man, I want to be able to do a career like you are out of music, then take some of the stuff that's worked for me and try it. you know, Apply it to your life, and you're not asking for a whole lot. You really are like, you enjoy playing. Do you enjoy singing? Do you like getting behind the mixer? You like mixing? Then take time to develop that craft and get sharp so that when you get to rehearsal, you're on point. All you're doing is compliment. It's how I got my calls for anything, and it's understanding your role. That's your role. Master what you're supposed to do so that you're not doing something you're not asked to do, and people are like, no, 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 that sounds good, but that's not what we wanted. That's not how the song goes. Leave the space for when you get directed. One of my best drummers that he passed away a few years ago, sadly. His name is Harry Parker. Kahari Parker was his last tour was with George Benson, but he goes back to Mary J. Blige, to Destiny Child, and he's toured all of them. Well, he was a close friend of mine. Here in the studio, we've recorded several sessions. My studio in Chicago, we played together on concerts. And the one thing I've always learned about him is as a drummer, the discipline. He comes in as good as he is. He's doing what I asked him to do. Then during session, if I need more, hey, give me some more fills in this part here. Okay, cool, done. It's never, and that mindset is what I expect, like from musicians when I work with, and whether I'm leading them or if I'm just being part of that nucleus.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah.
get in your lane, do what you're supposed to do, and you'll get your calls. People will call you. They're going to want you. They're going to see that. They're going to love that. No, this guy's a good guy to work with. You want to call him back, and so those are the things that I mean, as far as my pet peeve.
Thanks for sharing that. Now, before you go, can you please share your social media with our listeners so everyone can follow you and keep up with what you got going on because you have a lot going on.
Thank you, Sharice. I appreciate that. No. So Eddie Torres Music, that's my handle on pretty much all my social media, my website, Eddie Torres Music. Um, Anywhere you type in Eddie Torres Music, you'll find something of mine there. But all my social medias are Eddie Torres Music. You'll find. I think LinkedIn is probably the one that says Eddie Torres Sound because
Okay.
music was already taken. But everything else, Eddie Torres Music, Instagram, social media, Facebook, my Facebook page. Yeah, you'll find that, and my website.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful information and telling us some stories. I hope you're going to be a reoccurring guest because I'd love to interview you again.
Thank you, Sharice. It was an honor. Congratulations on your show, and
Thank you.
it's fantastic. It was a privilege to be part of your show today, and looking forward to the release.
Awesome. And
If
thank
you need
you.
from me, please reach out. Sorry.
Oh, no, no, no. No problem. No problem. I was going to say thank you again, but also thank you, listeners, for listening to Connect Like Minds.
Yes, thank